Now moving on, we move on with our first session. So our first speaker in today's conclave is an innovator and creator of 3 psychometric assessment tools. An internationally educated psychology honors graduate with a master's from the London School of Economics, certified in more than 16 tests, Ms. Niharika Bhargava, founder Psych4U, comes with a rich experience of 15 years in multiple aspects of human resource management with Indian and international MNCs. She will share her thoughts on how we can break in through psychometric assessment. Ms. Niharika Bhargava.
Are you ready?
Thank you, Juhi. Thank you, Hari. I have been associated with HSSE for the last 2 years, and it has been a great experience. So today we are here, how we can actually break through these adversities through these 3 different things, break in through psychometric assessments, and that's the part I would be talking about today. Now, this pandemic has really changed the way we work, the way we think, the way we engage with people and organizations. It is important to start introspecting how to adjust to this new work, but also analyze if our internal preferences, motivation, drivers, or engagement initiatives have changed. Also, goals for organizations have changed in terms of keeping their employees satisfied. To assess these changes, we as HR and as leaders need a scientific method of examining organizations and employees in a more rounded approach. Psychometric testing does just that. So let me first define psychometric testing. Psychometric testing is the science of assessing mental abilities and the behavioral traits of a person. Throughout my session, you have any questions, please put it in the chat box and we will try to answer them after the session. Now, I want to actually understand, right? So the first thing, because of this pandemic, we started doing all this introspection. Now, wouldn't it help if we did this introspection through using a scientific method? Psychometric testing actually is very useful and it's very underutilized. And that's the whole reason I founded my company, Psych4U, to be able to actually reach out and get people aware of psychometric testing in different areas. Right now, the state of psychometrics in India is the fact that it is only being used for hiring stage. And the other areas where it can be used is not being used at all. My job today is that to leave you with certain thoughts about psychometric testing so that you can see the benefits that I have myself experienced during my journey as being an HR professional, as well as my journey as an entrepreneur, how it can benefit the entire community and any person who wants to understand themselves and try to fit themselves in a role which is most apt with themselves as well as the organization. It is very important that we fit ourselves not based on what society says or by the pressures, but basically based on our own preferences. This pandemic actually taught us to appreciate the little things in life. Started helping us also understand what our strengths and areas of improvement are. And so many people lost their jobs and also had to redefine their job skills and sets. That's why at this time, psychometric testing is extremely important in any organization. Now, when I was in HR, I realized that the problems that occur when you do not have psychometric testing in your organization. Sometimes what happens is a person is hired You spend so much time in the recruitment process, time, effort, you bring different types of people to actually evaluate the person. You go through a robust assessment process, but at the end, you hire a candidate which either fits the role or does not fit the role or ends up working for another profile. Because later, when we get to know the person, we realize that that person was actually better suited for something else. Now, can we actually utilize that time, that opportunity cost that we're spending so much on recruitment process, by making it much more scientific and in a way much more holistic? So ultimately, the recruitment process does not end up giving the intended outcome that we are actually supposed to be giving. So wouldn't it make it more sense that if we use a psychometric testing at that time? So this is only one example as how and when you can use a psychometric testing initially. Now let me actually go back to understanding what are the different motivational behind someone actually working. Now, if I was to look into one psychology theory, the self-determination theory. Now, Recchi in 1970s, he created this theory. What was this theory based on? Competence, autonomy, and relatedness. So what it necessarily in layman terms defines self-determination theory, it said that a person normally is motivated if you keep giving them some kind of ways in which they can grow competence and also strengthen their skill set. That's the first one. Second, autonomy. Autonomy, if you give certain kind of freedom to the employee, the person feels that they're in control and they will relate better and start trusting the organization better. Also, they'll be more satisfied. The third would be relatedness. Relatedness is connecting or feeling that the company is a family and wanting to actually go beyond their job role. Now, all these three things are extremely important. As HR and as leaders, we would want all our employees to have all these three. Now, we can give them intrinsic motivation, okay, try to improve that, as well as give them extrinsic motivation. Most organizations focus so much on the extrinsic motivation, which is your outside rewards, and keep rewarding them by either giving them recognition, appreciation, monetary award, and they feel that the employee is going to stick with them for throughout the end of time. But that is not the case. If your intrinsic motivation, which is your motivation which comes from within, that is not managed in a proper way, I will leave the organization, because extrinsic motivation is only temporary and it will only make you happy for some time, but it will not in a long term actually benefit you. So right now, today, I want to talk about how we can actually improve our intrinsic motivation by using psychometric and other tools to actually improve their engagement, their competence, as well as giving them autonomy so that they, at the end, want to stay in our organization. Now, isn't that our main objective? That our employees actually feel that pride or sense of pride to be able to connect with our organization, and that loyalty is there even if they oppose it. So a lot of times people, some organizations don't have that much awareness of psychometric. So they kind of just do it at the hiring stage, but they never tell the candidate why are they doing it. And also HR gets all this information about the person. Do they actually utilize that information in the correct manner? That is always something which has to be used. So if you're using psychometric, make sure you know the what and how to do it. Because one thing you could be knowing about what psychometric, but when to actually use it at the correct place, that is extremely as important as utilizing it as well. So what I've realized is lots of times you do the psychometric and a candidate comes to me and says, ma'am, what is the right or wrong? How can I actually master this psychometric? Is there any way in which actually I can learn how to kind of game it? So when I tell them there's no right and wrong in psychometric, it is a good fit or bad fit for the organization. So that is very important to understand. There's no right and wrong. Second, which is very, very important, is that when you're using a psychometric, use it as part of your selection. Do not use it as the ultimate decision making for rejecting or accepting a candidate. It always has to use as part of it, because by the danger of rejecting someone based solely only on their personality and the behavioral traits that they have been depicting so far is not actually being more futuristic as to what that person can be in the future. And that's also equally important, because we also have to remember employees are always tested on two things: performance as well as potential. So someone could be a better worker, but should we reject that person based solely on their past performance? No. Okay. Now, a lot of times this mismatch which happens, okay, when your lack of psychometric happens, is because you have outdated hiring processes. You have lack of awareness about the demands of the particular job roles. Okay. You also do not have the intelligence training to shortlist suitable candidates. You have lack of clarity on the precise expectations of a candidate, and you have a lack of a competency framework that defines job and organizational competencies. Recruitment process do not consider candidates' personality traits, aptitude, and behavioral tendencies. And all these three are actually included in a psychometric testing. Now, psychometric testing can be used throughout the employee's life cycle. Okay, so at the time of hiring, the time of review, so mid-year review, time of promotion, time of adding role responsibilities, and when an employee is transferring from one department to the other, as well as choosing projects. So it's very important to understand that the actually psychometric testing is not only used for recruitment or hiring, it can be used in all these different areas of the employee life cycle. The test, there are different types of psychometric test. There's achievement test, there's attitude test, and aptitude test. And let me define them even further. Achievement tests are technical tests. Okay. So if you have an engineer joining a manufacturing company, you need to have an achievement test. Attitude tests are surveys to understand what kind of expectations the employee has when they're joining the organization. And this will go to my before point where I did mention that it is important to understand the expectations of the employee so that you can best suit them to the best role for them. And the third type of test, a third type of psychometric test is aptitude test. That is where a lot of people actually do not utilize and it's being underutilized right now. So those are personality tests, verbal reasoning, abstract reasoning, and numerical reasoning. So it's crucial in acquiring intrinsic qualities of the job candidates, existing employees. So it's not only for those people you're hiring, but it's also important to also keep doing this for your existing employees, because those are the people who are giving us the business, who are doing the profit. So what eventually happens is we spend so much time in hiring the right candidate, but we forget them over the way. So it's very important that throughout their journey while they're working for us, we make sure of their needs so that we go back to the motivation theory, the self-determination theory of competence, autonomy, and relatedness. So we need to make the environment conducive for this new change to work. The advantages of using psychometric, objective, and impersonal makes recruitment process more efficient by saving cost, Reliable indicators of future job performance, identifies training needs and provides a career roadmap for employees. Interviewing process becomes much more holistic. More employees are fit into roles that suit their personality, able to identify those employees who are burnout, stressed, and might leave the organization, and provides a quantitative measure to qualitative assessments to present a more accurate view of the candidate's employees' capabilities. Abilities, leadership potential, personality, and culture fit, and also potential to take on larger or more challenging roles. So look at all the advantages of using psychometric test. And that's why I'm a strong believer that if we use psychometric test in the right manner, we can actually benefit it 100-fold. Okay, it's not only 10-fold, I would say 100-fold, because you're getting a 360 degree of the person rather than just a small section that we get through their education or past career experience. Now, let me talk about the state of psychometrics in India. Okay. People need to reassess their preferences and jobs according to their behavioral needs. And especially in this time of pandemic, we need to be able to reassess your own preferences as well as your employees' preferences to make sure that what we had decided what the needs could be, those have changed over time. Are we actually taking in and being dynamic in our approach in when we are approaching our employees, or are we just using a one-fit-all model throughout? Second is that competitiveness is on the rise. So you need to distinguish yourself as a company from others. You need to evaluate your candidates and provide high level of talent development tools using scientific methods to improve processes than use the traditional work methods. You need to up your game because so many companies are out there who are just looking to hire the right talent. So what is your difference point is if you provide a much better way in which your cost right now might be a little bit more spending on the employee, but later on it will only benefit you and your organization. 1 out of 3 have never explored psychometrics in India. According to a study conducted by Willis Tars Watson, 56% organization only use psychometric tools. This is a very, very sorry state. This study was done in 2016 and nothing has changed from then. Very, very slightly, but this is still the state of organizations, their awareness of what psychometric does and how they can use it. Also the limitations, because there's so much free literature out there, they don't know which ones would be correct to use, and that's where I think there's a lot of challenge. Mainly also in psychometrics in India, they use it for recruitment or selecting talent, and it's not used for talent development, high potential identification and development, and succession planning. Only about 25% usage in these areas after the initial recruitment stage. And this is very, very worrying that actually only 25% of organizations know that it should be used in different areas of the employee life cycle and not only recruitment. This psychometrics can also be used for employee engagement, as identifying fit between employees' personality, culture, and values of the company so that the employee is more engaged. And right now, there's very low adoption in India. Why is there low adoption in India? And many of you could answer this question yourselves, but I'll just put out there. And this is what research also says: unavailability of psychometric tools other than personality assessments. Second, it comes at a very high cost, and reliability of tools is always a question mark. So the question for HR and leaders is always, is this tool really reliable? Should I really utilize it? And should I put some kind of cost associated to psychometric? Is it something good to have, or is it something must have? Now, as HR and as leaders, what can we do? Psychometrics needs understanding of three factors: human behaviors, personality, and behavioral interaction in given context, and assessment fundamentals, validity, and reliability. Okay, so if you're using psychometrics, make sure that the tool that you're using has been tried and tested internationally, locally as well. Why I say also locally, but make sure that the psychometric is also for the Indian audience. Many times what happens is we use psychometric, but we're not able to actually capture the essence of this kind of section of people. And we as Indians are different. And is that actually psychometric capturing that beauty? Second is need to be inquisitive on all these three to be able to design appropriate assessment framework. Third, have a holistic understanding of the talent cycle requirements. Fourth, understanding the advantages that different assessments provide at different stages, HR professionals can map talent demands in a better manner. Okay. Now, let me actually go in detail for each of the areas. Now, if I was to look at what are the top 5 psychometric tests used in recruitment, we have the Myers-Briggs, which is for self-discovery, the 16PF, which is for hiring and employee development, DISC profiling, which is most popular and most people use, is for task-oriented versus people-oriented. That means if you want to screen potential employees, DISC profiling is actually quite useful. Verbal reasoning, this is if you want to understand the level of comprehension skills in somebody, and also you want to see whether this person can identify crucial business related issues and logically draw conclusions from business related reading. So somebody who's in strategy or decision making, that person should be tested on verbal reasoning. Numerical reasoning is tests are used to measure someone's ability to interpret, analyze, and draw a logical conclusion. So someone who's in data science, someone who is a CA, who's in the accounting and finance, numerical reasoning would be a good test for using. Competency testing, like personality profile, is to analyze specific abilities. So whenever you are creating a job description or a job role, that's the best time to actually do personality profiling of the person, as well as when you're hiring somebody. Situational judgment test is a test which measures a candidate's suitability based on their responses to work-related scenarios. So this actually assesses their problem-solving ability. And the test, which actually is good for assessing, is reasoning assessment. This is to measure their individual's inducive and deducive reasoning abilities. Okay. Now, if I was to see in talent development and succession planning, which test could be useful? FIROB, which is for interpersonal skills. Lead survey, it's for understanding the employees or candidates' leadership style. Conflict mode instrument, which is for the team effectiveness. Managerial grid, which is for the management style. Building block is for team effectiveness. Blockage survey is management effectiveness. Burnout survey is potential for burnout or succession planning. And psychometric 360 leadership, which is basically getting feedback from all your peers so you can actually identify the strengths, potential challenges related to work and execution, interacting with others and thinking. MBTI is a good test to also use during talent development and succession planning because it tells us a little bit about their leadership style, also explores their preferences, influence how they manage change. And actually at this time, MBTI is a very useful test to be using. And another test which is useful is Work Personality Index, which actually identifies the leadership potential and helps develop it. Okay. Another area of HR is identifying high potential employees and development assessment process. So in this, Which are the tests which could be useful? Is your personality inventory test, which is your big 5, cognitive ability test, assessment battery, and the 9-box model. Okay, so basically here what I'm doing, I'm listing of all the psychometric tests which could be useful for each area of HR. And what's important here to understand, okay, forget the list of all the tests. What's most important to understand is you have to use different assessments at different areas so that you can actually create a very robust assessment framework. So that is my idea for being able to mention these tests to you. So you know that these tests are out there and how they can be useful, because what they measure is very, very important. Another test which is important for the high potential program is Hogan. Okay, so Hogan actually measures the degree to which people can manage their careers, leadership emergence, the degree to which people stand out from their peers, leadership effectiveness, and the degree to which people are able to build and maintain high performing teams. So if you see all the advantages of psychometric, you know when to use it, because of the fact that now you have knowledge that there's different tests for different areas. You also understand that the employee life cycle, every stage is very important, and it's not only important to focus on only the hiring or recruitment stage. Then you are some organization that is ready for psychometric assessments or to implement it in your workplace. Now, I can actually help you. I have created and developed the Corporate Holistic Fitness Instrument. That is one of the 3 psychometric tools that I've created, which will help your organization understand the pulse of your employees by culture, employee engagement, health and wellness, as well as identifying the emotions that someone brings when they are doing a certain behavior. Now, all these 4 elements are extremely important, and that's what we have done when we have developed this guy. I'm also certified in all these different tests like the MBTI, FIRO-B, and 16 other tests. And for more details regarding this, you can always reach out to me. If these tests do not fit in, because sometimes, many times, you want a test which is only for your organization, I am able to actually create that tool for you as well. So I'll leave you with a few thoughts. Okay. How do we break in through a psychometric assessment? By making sure that we understand the problems if we don't. Second is understanding when we should actually put in the right assessment tools at the right time. And third is making sure that we have a follow-up. We don't forget about it. I have realized that many times as organizations, we want to be progressive or want to look progressive to everybody, to our future candidates. So what we do psychometric in the beginning, but then we forget and we do no follow-up after. So it's equally important to spend that time to actually understand what were the 3 learnings from the psychometric and communicating that to the HR, to the leaders, to the top management, as well as the employee. So they understand that themselves better, so that they can fit themselves in a better role. So thank you, everyone. That's all from me today.
Fabulous.
Wonderful, Niharika, and thank you so much for that takeaway on how organizations can benefit through psychometric tools. We will now go ahead and take some questions, and you can either type your questions in the chat box, or you can raise your hand, or you can unmute and ask the questions. We have a question from Mr. Narendra Kumar, and he says, can there be an indicator when to introduce psychometric test during the employee life cycle?
Yes. So sometimes what happens is, if you see that the indicator one will be from the employee themselves, maybe their job satisfaction is low, they are feeling demotivated. Also, they're not performing that well in their current job. that's a huge indicator to realize that that's the time to reassess their needs and maybe see if their skill sets are better fit for someone, for some other place. Okay. Also, it's also important to understand that when you promote somebody, um, you believe that they have the necessary skills for the necessary next job. But many times what happens is they are not even trained for the new skill set. So if there are certain skills that they require for the next stage, you need to make sure. And what, as an HR, I have always seen that historically people have defined all the needs that every organization or every department requires, and they have been trying to fit people in those boxes for a long time. It's time to actually reassess and identify training needs continuously to make sure that you don't have this I think the end situation is when the employee leaves the organization, and you don't want that. So before that, you need to take these necessary steps to make sure the employee is satisfied.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Niharika. We have another question by Mr. Neil Ghosh, and then we'll take question by Mr. Prasad M. Mr. Neil Ghosh asked, how an employer can overcome with the issue wherein employees who are very much familiar with the assessment that might not give a correct interpretation. And this is my question also.
Okay, so sometimes the employee is familiar with the assessment, and so you want to make sure that it's not bias. That's what I understand, right? The
Yes.
question.
Yes.
So sometimes what happens is, yes, sometimes the candidate comes that they are aware about what the employees are, but don't worry, there's a pattern of questions, and the way that they answer, we can kind of actually filter those people who are trying to also please the employer. Many times what happens is, of course, the candidate wants you to select them, right? Or the employee wants their managers to be happy with who they are. So they try to actually answer in the best possible way. Now we make sure that we have enough number of questions in a particular trait that we're measuring, so that we can actually filter that. And also by probing and asking the right questions after they do the psychometric test. So if you just leave the psychometric test and after that don't ask or probe the questions, then you're actually just deciding based on how they've answered. And that is always a danger. Okay?
And that also highlights that psychometric tests are just an indicator and not the decision makers.
Exactly. It has to be part of the process, always. And that is very, very key.
Thank you, Niharika. And now can I ask Mr. Prasad to please ask his question?
Yes, thank you for giving me an opportunity to ask the question. Uh, Good afternoon to all of you. My question is like right now, I mean, when the session was going on, respected Niharika ji, she has mentioned many names of the test, and which is at the moment difficult to grasp it and to remember all the names of the test. So my question is, where can I get all this information? Do you have any website for that or something like that, or you have any blogs written out over there? And this is the first question. The second question is, when they do psychometric test, is the psychometric, what I understand is like it's related to mind, how the employee what is the mindset of the employee when he gives that test particular thing, and in the due course of time they will give the test and the results will be out, but that is only for a short span of time. The entire mindset can be identified, not judged, uh, but can be identified when the employee sticks to the organization for a couple of years or something like that, and then the mind gets revealed in the due course of time. So my question is like, what is the basic significance, or what is the purpose of uh, doing this psychometric test in one short span of time? Are the employees, are the employer or the companies are able to make out what kind of mindset that particular candidate has? So I hope my question is very clear.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Prasad. Very good questions. Okay, so
Niharika, I'm
your
sorry.
first part.
Niharika, sorry to interrupt. I think if you can just keep that answer brief. Our
Yes.
second speaker has already joined us. So I think
Okay.
I'll
So,
schedule.
yeah. So thank you, Mr. Prasad. Okay, so the first part of the question, yes, we can definitely send. I'll send you my profile as well with the list of tests which you can kind of utilize, and also the test which I did mention that you can mention use in different areas. I can send you a link for that. Okay. Now, the second part of your question was very interesting to actually see that is psychometric testing useful if people's mental mindset could change over time. Okay, now psychometric, let's go back to the definition that psychometric is the measure of mental abilities as well as behavioral traits. Okay, so the thing is, it's not only your mental mindset, it could be the way you are right now, but so I would say that it builds who you are. Okay, it tells a lot, but saying that can your personality change over time? It can be situational, yes. Okay, so the thing is, what's important is to reassess your behavioral traits over time. Okay, so there are certain tests to be able to do that. So say that, of course, you do your MBTI. You don't have to keep doing it every time you change an organization, but you can do the behavioral test, which actually see that your behavioral does change over time and how it's improved. Okay. And I think there were two more questions, I think.
Yeah, I
So,
think you could
But
probably.
I think, we can address them later. Yes.
Yeah, we'll address them later. Niharika, you can just put in your contact details in the
Yes,
chat.
I'll just put it.
Uh,
I'll put my
We can
phone
also,
number.
we will also share it later. We will share the speaker profiles and their contact details in the WhatsApp group also. So, so you can kind of get in touch with them. Just want to make one remark to kind of conclude this session before I hand it back to Jui. The whole idea of doing this session and starting with Niharika was how can you break in through psychometric assessments in this kind of a context that the world is going through? How can you kind of understand yourself better? That's the whole idea. How can you understand yourself better? I have immensely benefited from psychometric instruments myself. I am an internationally certified trainer for a behavior styles workshop, and it is based on a certain psychometric analysis, a psychometric instrument. And it really changed my life because it gave me so much better understanding of who I am. And I think HR needs to play that role, not only from an organization perspective, but through the psychometric instrument, can the individual understand himself better? Whether it is a DISC, whether it is a FIROB, whether it is an MBTI, whichever instrument. So even when we developed CAI, our corporate holistic fitness instrument, we put in the 9 emotions of the Navrasa as a tool to understand what are the various emotions people bring to the workplace. And I think that's the key. That's the key. Can you break inside yourself through psychometric instruments? And I think Niharika does such an amazing job. And she's one of the, I don't know of any other psychometric assessor that I have not come across who develops instruments by herself. And I think that is fantastic. She's not only certified for 15, 16 instruments, she can also develop and customize those instruments for organizations. So you can actually create an instrument for your organization and your organization can use it for internal purposes. And I think that's really fantastic. Niharika, thank you so much. I mean, your sessions are always
Thank you, Hari,
so full of
for giving me this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Niharika. You are a wonderful associate, great friend, great colleague. And it's wonderful to have you. And what a great start to the first HSSE HR conclave. Thank you, Niharika. Thank you so much. Over to you, Jules.